Hello and welcome to the Gas, everyone. I'm Gary Gastelou, and we've got our foot on the gas this week. Lots of guests, lots of things to talk about. But first, let me introduce my co-host, Alex Nunez, the Alex in the Gary and Alex Show. How you doing today?
I'm great, Gary. How's it going?
It's going great. I know you saw the Daytona 500 as I did, and we're going to be dissecting that kickoff to the NASCAR season later in the show and talking about the one thing everyone is complaining about. People are really happy about the changes NASCAR have been making, so they have to find something new to complain about, and that's what makes it great. NASCAR, that's an acronym, like the gas is an acronym, but IndyCar is a compound word, and the combination of Honda and Chevrolet as its engine suppliers has extended their agreement with the series for the next couple of years. We were talking about that last week, but this week we're going to be talking to Chuck Schifsky, the national manager of Honda and Acura Motorsports in the US, about the deal and what it means for Honda. But first, Alex, back to the gas. It's called the gas, but of course, we talk about other types of vehicles, including electric vehicles. But this week, we're going to be talking about an electric vehicle that can also run on gas. Can you believe that?
I can believe that because we have seen this in the past, right?
Not quite like this. Scout Motors, it's Volkswagen's reboot of the legendary American SUV brand. It's got a new US based headquarters in Charlotte and a factory in South Carolina that's going to be building electric and electrified off road SUVs, hopefully starting next year. And joining us now to talk about how the brand got to this point and where it's heading is Scout's Vice President of Strategy and Brand, Ryan Decker. Ryan, thanks for joining us on the show.
Glad to be here, Gary.
So, just to catch people up who aren't familiar with what's going on with Scout, first of all, can you tell us how Volkswagen, which is back in this project, ended up with the Scout brand? Because I think it's a fascinating tale how that came up together.
It's a minor but important clarification from the start, Gary, is our relationship is with the Volkswagen Group, not with the Volkswagen brand. So again, a minor thing, but I do
Correct.
want to reiterate that. So the Volkswagen Group acquired the Scout brand or the rights to the Scout brand through a long series of meandering corporate acquisitions, I would say. So to go way back one to the beginning, you have to look at where Scout came from, right? International Harvester. At one point, IH was basically one of the world's most valuable companies that had several different businesses. They had tractors, they had earth-moving vehicles, they had military and defense vehicles, and then, of course, they had, why we're here, a line of passenger vehicles that for several decades sort of defined became the SUV category as we know it. That started with the Scout. From the Scout, they had pickup truck derivatives, they had long wheelbase derivatives, and they had a lot of success from 1960 to 1980 when a bunch of bad things happened kind of all at once, right? I think you had an oil crisis, you had some labor activities that were ongoing, to be clear, a strike that happened, and International Harvester made the decision to shutter the Scout passenger vehicle business. And with that, of course, they closed their factory in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And with closing the factory meant, of course, people losing a lot of jobs just across the board, bad. And what really made it worse is that Scout was really on its way to earning sort of a beloved place in the automotive vehicle landscape. Yeah. And I think when you look across the last several decades, there's not too many products that people have made their living restoring and sort of keeping the flame burning, right? And Scout is one of those products that people kept the flame burning, and that's for a reason. People love them. People wanted to see them come back. So what happened? So that the rights to the passenger vehicles made their way to a commercial truck business, of course, International. International was acquired or became a commercial truck business called Navistar. Navistar was over the years acquired by a Volkswagen Group commercial truck business called Traton. And then with that acquisition, the Volkswagen Group ended up with the rights to Scout. So that's sort of the long and winding multi-decade story of how the Volkswagen Group ended up with the rights to Scout.
So, what was the genesis of rebooting it? Was Volkswagen Group thinking we should be in the electric off road truck game? What should we call it? Or was it more, hey, we've got this great brand sitting on the shelf. What could we do with it?
Look, I never speak for the Volkswagen Group, so I can only offer sort of my observations of it. And my observations are that we know the Volkswagen Group was looking for opportunities to grow in North America. That's clear. We know that the Volkswagen Group has a strong portfolio of brands and products in North America. You all know the brands and products, some iconic, really great brands and products. But what they didn't have was a way into sort of the largest American segments, which are pickup trucks and more rugged SUVs. And these are large segments in terms of volume, but these are large segments in terms of reaching really unique customer profiles, right? Off-roads, outdoors, DIY, hands-on, you can name it. And sort of completely unaddressed space for the group to go in and participate in. Now, one thing that's clear, right, is if you're going to go into those American segments, you can't do it as a poser, right? Anyone who's been paying attention knows that. Like, you have to be legit. And being legit in these segments means typically, things like body on frame, legit credibility, right? Platforms that are designed to do these types of things. And it also does mean the brand. And there is a lot of sort of American pride in purchasing vehicles in these segments. And so the decision was made to use Scout as a way to sort of tap into that cultural resonance that these segments have and to do it in a way that's a no joke, credible, legit off-road product, like Scout always was. So that, of course, came with the decision to do ground up new platform. That came with the decision to do a greenfield factory that knows how to make this new platform and these new products. And it also came with the decision to establish in a completely new company. Yeah, so Scout isn't just a brand. Scout Motors is a completely new independent company, Delaware Corporation, American style board of directors that started hiring from employee number one, which was our CEO, Scott Keogh. Of course, I was employee number two. And I think we just cracked 1,300 or so as we're continuing to build and scale up this company.
You've been there since the start. I know you had Volkswagen Group behind you, but how do you just start a car company? What's the first thing you do?
Well, first you got to figure out how to pay people and give them laptops and email addresses and where are they going to sit and but once you get over those very tactical things, the clear focus was we had a dream and an ambition and I think a great strategy. But really, to create a car company, it's focus, 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 execution, execution, execution across every single part of the company. And going back to those early days, it's of course step one is building a great team, hiring well, right? Because it's one thing if you're one employee in a, 60,000 person company. It's another thing if you're one employee in a company that has 20 people, right? So you really have to hire well. You need to establish that entrepreneurial culture. So that was job one. You need to build out the technology environment. Of course, that means in its simplest form, giving out laptops and email addresses, but you have to enable engineers to work. You have to enable yourself to design a factory. And that means getting into the teeth. Of course, as you all know, vehicle projects are hard, cross-functional, always solving for conflicting interests, trying to deliver upon the requirements that will make these scout vehicles great. And just focus, 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 execution, but nail the team and nail the culture because you can't undo it.
You unveiled them after a couple of years of teasing them. You unveiled the production versions last fall. They really do look like 21st century versions of the old Scouts. You've got the Terra pickup, the Traveler SUV. They both have 4x4 drivetrains and up to 350 miles of range, plus some old school features. You've got solid rear axles. We haven't seen this in electric vehicles in the US before, and available front bench seats, which is very much a throwback. But the big surprise was the Harvester versions of these, which are technically called series hybrids, but what's become known as range extended electric vehicles. To the electric motor, you've added a small internal combustion engine that works as a generator to provide an extra 150 miles of range. And I hear most of the 150,000 reservation holders you already have are opting for the Harvester models.
That's correct.
I mean, that's kind of taken over the brand, hasn't it? Almost.
What started as a strategic pivot, listening to the market, listening to what customers were telling us, has sort of, yeah, become the defining characteristic of the company now. And if you think about, what we're doing, we're building a company that really has a unique opportunity to define itself around EREV leadership. And what I mean by that is our engineers know how to engineer these things. The vehicles are designed to package this additional hardware. The factory knows how to install it. The supply chain includes all of the necessary parts and components to do it. You can keep going throughout the value chain all the way up until the customer experience, right? We will deliver upon a sales experience where people know how to educate and enthusiastically sell these products. And then, of course, we'll also know how to service them. And so, we're really building the company around this EREV leadership idea now. And I think it's no surprise, Gary, why the majority of our reservations are for it. It really delivers upon a lot of really unique customer value that, frankly, customers have been asking for. You can still get really exciting 0 to 60 times. You can get by far class leading torque, really compelling 4x4 in driving dynamics. You can do things like over the air updates, of course. You still have a front trunk, which is kind of a cool feature, but you get the confidence of having 500 miles of combined range. And frankly, what we're delivering, we have more range than any of our target competitors, whether they're EV, plug-in hybrid, or gas. We have class leading torque. We have almost class leading 0 to 60. So when you look at our full value proposition, we're really delivering a lot of very interesting things that, no surprise, customers are finding to be very exciting and compelling.
We've had a handful of range extended electric vehicles in the US. None of them have been successful up to this point, and we haven't had any trucks, certainly not any off-road trucks to date. What makes you confident that you could pull this off? Do you have the prototype? Have people driven it? Have they said, wow, this is great, our customers are going to love this? Or is it still a conceptual work in progress that you got to dial in over the next year or so?
On the concept and on the project, we're definitely doing all of said dialing in. And for us, that's things like durability testing and performance testing and, of course, safety testing, on and on. We're going to keep doing all that hard work. But we have a couple proof points. Proof point one is the reservation demand, right? When people read about the specs that we've reported upon, they say, "Oh, I like that. I want to reserve my place in line," and they're doing that. And that's not a surprise to us because, of course, leading up to this decision, we did do a fair amount of research, understanding interest, customer requirements, customer willingness to pay, etc. And we saw lots of really interesting proof points. And across the board, from our reservations and from that research, two things really stood out. E-revs have sort of 50 state appeal. Unlike a lot of new entrants and unlike a lot of new EV brands that bias heavily towards the coast, we see and we saw much more, I would say, normal 50 state geographic distribution. We're seeing reservations across the country, unlike what we've seen from a lot of our EV peers that are heavily sort of New York, California, and along the sort of smile states, if you will. And the second thing we saw, again from our reservations, is what they're driving today. And historically, when you look at source of sales in the industry, there's always sort of been two camps, right? There's been EV people and then EV haters to a certain degree. And they rarely kind of go back and forth. And what we're seeing is that we're able to appeal to the EV people out there, as well as to the people who have been sort of EV skeptics who are still driving gas vehicles, because they see that number of 500 miles of combined range, and they know that they have that confidence of that gas engine on board and that they can refuel that way. And that solves the anxieties that we know they have.
Are you getting a lot of people who actually did own Scouts in the past, or is this a new audience and maybe just people that are getting tired of Rivians and are looking for something new?
I was looking at that the other day, actually. So of course, there is a large fleet of scouts out there, and they're passionate and they're loyal and they're doing everything they can to find spare parts and barn finds. But let's be honest, it's not the biggest car park that's probably in operation today. But I do love seeing when we ask, what are you driving today? It's all the normal off-roaders that you would expect, but I do always love seeing a Scout 2 in the list. So we are seeing some of them. But I think more importantly than what we're seeing in the data, we know that the Scout community is out there and it's big and that they're rooting for us. And frankly, I think we're doing a pretty good job of leaning in and listening to them. And what I mean by the Scout story or the Scout community is not just the people who are driving one or who own one today. There's a much bigger community of people who simply recall Scout. Yeah, either their parents had one, or their grandpa taught them how to drive on one, or they remember going fishing with their uncle in one. And we love that nostalgic connection that people still have to this brand.
Last year, you're talking about a ballpark starting price around 60 grand. Is that still the target or have things changed?
100%, that is still the target. We're holding the line on that, starting at retail pricing below $60,000 without any incentives. It's really important that Scout still hits the core of the market, and we think that's a very competitive price point for the feature values and the characteristics that we're delivering with these products.
I believe the plant's being built to have an eventual capacity of around 200,000 units a year. I mean, given the changes in the EV market and the disappearance of the federal tax credits, has your long-term outlook, your 5-year, 10-year outlook for how big this company scales to changed at all, or do you think those are really going to be a factor?
No, to answer your question directly, and we have a lot of confidence, and we are fighting hard to deliver what we think will be a really cool, really innovative uh, product in the core of the market. These are the largest segments. These are the largest customer groups. We like the opportunity in front of us. We have to go deliver upon it, but that's what we're fighting to do.
As far as when you are going to deliver them, 2027 was the target. I know that there was a report in Spiegel this week saying that you guys were a year behind schedule now. I've seen a few comments come out from Scout throwing some cold water on that story. What's your official response to what Spiegel had to say? What's the time frame for this?
Look, what we always said was target initial production in 2027, deliveries after that. I think if you look at a project of this ambition level, this scale, things will change, no doubt about it. Where we are today, we will actually start building our first validation models this year in 2026. That matures through next year into 2027. We go from validation models to pre-series builds to ultimately building cars for customers. We're going as fast as we can, but the milestone that we're focused on is actually let's start building the first cars this year and keep on going from there.
So, bottom line, you're telling Scout fans the brand's healthy, you're going full steam ahead, nothing to worry about.
We're going full steam ahead. Lots to worry about internally of getting all this stuff done, but we're fighting like crazy to deliver upon our commitments and what we said. And right now, we're holding the line. We're still doing it, so nothing to worry about.
You mentioned in terms of the reservation numbers that you're seeing people reserve scouts from across the country, not the usual sort of EV corridor states, for lack of a better term. Is there a particular state outside of, like, I believe just in general, California is obviously number one. I think Florida is number two for EV sales in general, or at least it was as of some point last year. Is there a state that has sort of taken you guys by surprise in terms of the concentration of people that have shown interest in the form of making reservations?
I don't have our exact, 50 state mixes in front of me, but I certainly do look at that data from time to time. And one thing I do love to see is how we're over-indexing in the Carolinas. And again, these are not necessarily number one, two, three, four, or five,
Sure.
but our performance in the Carolinas is over-indexing versus expectations. And it is great to see that in sort of our home states and where our factory is, we're seeing that fandom being built sort of on the ground floor by our neighbors. And I think that's a really important proof point, right? You got to have success where these cars are being built, and we're seeing that interest and that demand happening in both South Carolina and North Carolina, which I think is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
How do you build that fan base when you don't have the car or the truck to show them yet? I mean, they see it, but it's
Yeah.
I know other brands have done this, but getting people psyched about something that doesn't yet exist, what's the move there?
Well, Gary, you've seen we do have a few show car properties, and it is important for us to physically get those show car properties in front of people. And what we have said from the beginning is those aren't like completely fanciful show cars. Those are dang near reality show cars. And so they are very well representative of what the actual production product will look like. And we want to get them out in front of people. So we have gone to events. We'll continue to go to events. I think most recently we were at the Los Angeles Auto Show. And beyond getting the vehicles just in front of people, Scout employees love to go to those events because we frankly want the direct conversations. We want to hear from the people who are our reservation holders. We want to hear from the market in general. We want their feedback. We want their dialogue. I think that's part of how what Scout always was. It always was a community, and we want to keep sort of honoring that community orientation by physically showing up, shaking hands, and talking to people.
All right, Ryan Dicker, thanks for catching us up with Scout. We love the US built trucks here, whether they have gas or electric powertrain, so we cannot wait to check this out when we get a chance.
Thank you, guys. I can't wait for you to get up close to them soon. Appreciate you both.
Alex, this is like a big deal for the Volkswagen Group. I know it's a separate company, but Volkswagen itself hasn't been having the best time in the US the last couple of years. It really seems like this is a huge opportunity if they could pull it off.
Huge opportunity, important opportunity. It's an actual American brand, headquartered here. vehicles could be built here. The vehicles are objectively great looking.
Yep.
I mean, those show cars, they are awesome looking. And I think as you mentioned in the interview, they really do hew to the that sort of genetic scout, look while still being this very modern thing. So there's a lot of positives there. Very hard to launch a car brand, and as we all know, very difficult in this environment to launch an electrified brand. The fact that Scout had the EREV option from Go is super duper important. It would not shock me if this is a 90% plus EREV brand to the point where it almost would make sense for that just to be what it is, because it takes out any sort of hesitation somebody might have. Oh, I'm going to buy the electric one, or I'm going to buy the range extended one. The EREV, I mean, just on its face, the EREV package, 500 miles of range, zero charging anxiety, any of that stuff, because there's always a solution no matter where you are. That just seems like a winning combination. And it probably is going to be, in my opinion, the winning combination that gets the overwhelming majority of orders and deliveries ultimately when they finally go into production.
Ram and Jeep also allegedly going to be launching e-revs, or they call them revs, this year with the Wagoneer and the Ram 1500. Folks, for those of you who aren't familiar how all this works, this is different than a typical hybrid. Typical hybrid has an engine, electric motors, and they can all drive the wheels. Even the plug-in hybrids work like that. The series hybrid, the extended range electric vehicle, it takes the connection from the motor totally away from the wheels. All it does is work as a generator. And there have been a handful of cars on sale up till now that have offered this. The Fisker Karma was the first. The BMW i3 Rex range extended was another.
Chevy Volt, obviously.
Well, Chevy Volt, technically a range extended electric vehicle, but they did have a little hack where on the highway there was a transmission that could connect the gas motor to the wheels at certain speeds. It worked. It worked great. That was a great vehicle. Love driving that thing. But just from that technical standpoint, that was kind of what made it work. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works in the real world. All I can tell you about the BMW i3, for instance, I really enjoyed that. You drive it normally, it's great, but I was able to get the battery drained, find a hill that was big enough where it was only running off of its little, basically a scooter motor, because that was a tiny car, and it couldn't do more than 25 miles an hour going up this hill because the battery had been drained. Yeah, obviously that happens with a larger vehicle or really with any vehicle. That's kind of
Right.
disastrous. Now, I went out of my way to make it happen, but it was public roads. I didn't do anything too out of the ordinary. And, when you're talking about a big, heavy truck, this is the concern I personally have, and the one that I'm going to have to get proved works well.
Yeah, I mean, 300 miles of range baseline, even without the additional power unit or generator, is a lot. And as I think we just talked about on either the last show or the show before, the reality is we know most people are driving their daily drivers far less than that. They're never going to run out of range
They're not going to go
if
off road. They're not going to
they're
climb a
they're
mountain.
not going to do all that stuff. They're going to charge at home overnight for the most part, especially suburban garage use type thing. But this, I kind of like the have your cake and eat it option that you get with the generator.
Be interesting to see how it's priced. If it's 5 grand, 10 grand extra. I mean, just getting bigger batteries in electric vehicles like the Rivians could cost you
Yeah,
10 grand extra or more. So this is definitely a viable option. And even if you never get around to using it, that 1 or 2 times a year you're going on a long road trip, you don't want to deal with it. You got it right there.
it's nice to hear that everything seems like it's still full steam ahead. That Spiegel article was the sort of thing that gives you pause, but it's not like scouts were ready to go on sale tomorrow. We're still well into next year, no matter what, before we were going to see retail vehicles at the earliest, right?
Yep. And given all the other vehicles we're seeing getting canceled, electric vehicles, it's impressive that they are sticking with this.
Now, I found it interesting that they have this sort of hometown concentration of reservation holders, which you actually do like to see because, listen, when you're making the investments in a region to have your headquarters there and manufacturing there, I do take it as a positive that they're seeing a lot of response in terms of people like at least ponying up, and reserving their spot in line for when they go on sale.
Well, Alex, Scout's not the only one working on a new hybrid vehicle. IndyCar is as well. It's got hybrids now, and it's got a new one coming in 2028. And now we know who's going to be making the engines for the Indy cars because Honda and Chevrolet have just inked a new deal with the series to be its powertrain supplier for many years to come. Don't know exactly how many years, but at least until the new cars show up in 2028, and I'm sure a few years beyond that. But to tell us a little bit more about what's going on is the national manager of Honda and Acura Motorsports in the U.S., Chuck Schifsky, who joins us right now. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing today?
We're great. So listen, there was a little consternation about whether Honda and Chevy were going to stick with IndyCar, whether they're going to have to find some new people to work with. How did this deal finally come together last week?
Sure. So yes, lots of decisions to make in motorsports. As you guys know, it's not a decision that an OEM takes lightly. It's a fairly big investment for us. And for Honda, it was or has been 30 plus years that we've been an engine supplier in the IndyCar series, all the way back to 1994 for our first run. And that includes lots of championships, Indy 500 wins, 16 of them and counting, including this past year with Chip Ganassi Racing and Alex Palou. And so for us, we love IndyCar, we love the Indy 500, we love racing of all kind. And so, when we sat about trying to figure out what do we want to do we want to continue, do we not, do we look at other things? We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we weren't looking at all the options available to us in North America. And IndyCar was a pretty big one. 30 plus years is a big number. And so for us, we decided to renew, as you said, a multi-year agreement with the Penske organization and IndyCar, the owners of IndyCar. And yes, us and Chevrolet will be the two engine suppliers going forward.
Why is this a good series for Honda? It's a little odd compared to some other series. You got the spec chassis, the two brands, but lots of different teams using the engines. Are wins on Sunday selling Hondas on Monday?
Yeah, it comes down to for us, IndyCar is a series that helps us align with kind of brand components that Honda has going for it. I mean, you guys review cars, you know this. A lot of our cars, we pride ourselves on having them be fun to drive, exciting, and innovative, and IndyCar really matches well with that. So we find that the fans of IndyCar can relate to that. We find that they definitely gravitate towards our brands, and we've got plenty of research that tells us that is the case. So yes, the win on Sunday, sell on Monday is certainly still alive with Honda.
They got the new chassis coming in 2028, which has been delayed a couple of years now. Are the powertrains already basically done and just waiting for the car to get finished up? Because I know it was supposed to launch a few years ago,
Yeah.
actually.
So basically, the chassis, they've delayed 1 year on the chassis. There was a previous delay on the hybrid unit itself, which came on a couple of years ago, and has been wonderful, been great for competition. As you guys know, I mean, almost every vehicle that is being sold now, there's some kind of a hybrid or electrification component to it. And certainly hybrid was a big item that we wanted to see in Indy cars. And so that's happened. The actual chassis itself will be done by Dallara, which is the company that is doing the current chassis. And so this chassis has been around for a number of years, quite a few years actually. And the new chassis will hopefully improve on all of the areas that we would like to see improved. Lighter weight, of course, safer for the drivers, better to drive in traffic, all of those kinds of things. And so when this car launches in 2028, we will have a new 2.4 liter V6 twin turbo engine that will come along with that. Currently, we use a 2.2 liter twin turbo V6. So this will be an all brand new engine for us. And we're definitely excited. Testing will get started in not too many months from now, because as you can imagine, get those cars on track early in 2028, you've got to have plenty of testing across all 5 of the Honda teams. So it's an exciting time.
I'd heard a part of the delay was also just to make the cars look better. Have you seen the final product? Is it a good looking car?
I've seen renderings of it. I've not seen the actual car yet. I think it looks pretty cool. And yeah, I think IndyCar has taken to heart all the input they've gotten from the teams, the drivers, fans, of course, the OEMs, everybody involved. And yeah, I've said for a long, long time, the fans want 3 things out of a race car, especially an open wheel car like an Indy car. They want cars that are fast. They want good close racing and lots of passing, and they want them to sound cool. They don't want them to sound lame. And I know that might be an odd thing to say, but everybody loves a cool sounding race car, and IndyCar fans are no different.
One of the other parts of this deal was that IndyCar issued new team charters, one to you, one to Chevrolet. You can start your own factory team with that now. And I understand
Yep.
Honda, you already decided you are going to start your own team rather than loan it to somebody else.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So there's some rules around how you can use these charters. It is essentially a way for the OEMs to have a further stake in IndyCar racing, and not just the investment that we make on the technical side, but also have some kind of skin in the game, if you will, on the team side. So yes, we have decided that we will operate our team. We are going to work this car in conjunction with Meyershank Racing. We have a similar relationship with Meyershank with MSR already on the Acura side in IMSA Racing, where we engineer and strategize one of the units that MSR races. They race 2 in IMSA, 2 GTP cars. And so one of those is operated by HRC, Honda Racing Corporation USA. And so HRC will be doing the same thing with Meyershank with this IndyCar entry. And it's the first time that this has happened. And we're quite excited that we're going to get that underway in 2028 with the new car.
My question is, IndyCar this year, in my opinion, much better schedule, a lot more action to start the season. From the manufacturer partner perspective, I've got to believe more is better as far as Honda is concerned in terms of cars on the track.
Yeah, it is. I would say that a lot of the credit goes to kind of 2 different areas. One is the IndyCar management team themselves, Mark Miles, Doug Bowles, CEO and president of IndyCar, and then Fox has come on as the broadcast partner, came on a year ago, and partway through the year took a 1/3 equity stake in IndyCar, which is good for a number of different reasons. All the races are now on network TV, so there's no discussion about which streaming platform or where do I see it or any of that. It's pretty simple. And then Fox, if you've seen any of the commercials they've run recently, they just debuted the Will Power one the other day, which is all the different versions of Will Power. It's kind of funny. And so they've really leaned in on helping IndyCar and the partners like Honda, promote the series, get the word out about the series, and so that's good. As a part of that, one of their efforts was to try and get more of the races back to back to back at the start of the season. So we'll start out with the place where we always have opened the series for a number of years, St. Petersburg. Then we've got Phoenix, and then we've got the brand new race in Arlington. And then we've got several others. We're going to race at a different place in Canada outside of Toronto and Markham, and then DC, a race to honor the 250th anniversary or birthday of the country will come on in August, as you noted.
The HRC red, white, and blue colors will look good down there for sure.
Yeah, red, white, and blue. Everybody loves the little red, white, and blue, so there's no doubt about that.
Your future in IndyCar is secure. Honda is also back in Formula One this year with Aston Martin. Got to ask you, I'm sure you don't have any news to share right now, but there's been a lot of action in NASCAR with new manufacturers. Ram coming back, Dodge is clearly on the way. I know Honda's been chit-chatting with them for a couple of years, dancing around that. Is that something NASCAR fans should be keeping an eye on at this point?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the Formula One effort. Our our 2026 car, where we are the engine supplier to Aston Martin, has gotten kicked off. Testing is going pretty hot and heavy as we speak in Bahrain. Lots of things happening there. I don't know that anybody really knows what anybody's got yet. I think we'll know more once they get to Australia and get on the track and really get practicing and qualifying. We're optimistic, but it's a whole new formula. It's a new engine formula. The hybrid system is much larger and much more capable than the outgoing units, and so we're just going to have to wait. I think as fans, we're going to have to wait and see how all that goes. The question about NASCAR is one we get quite a bit. We would not be doing our jobs, as I said earlier, if we were not always looking at what should we be doing? Where do the fans want to see us? Where are the opportunities for Honda and racing? NASCAR is certainly a very large series and one that we have looked at and we will continue to look at, but no news to share yet. I think we've heard from the fans that they'd like to see us there, but like anything, and as I mentioned earlier, anything involving racing, it can be quite an expensive endeavor to get into, and so you have to kind of weigh all these things out. For us right now, we've renewed with IndyCar. That's the big push that we'll have here in the short term, and we'll see where things go in the future.
All right, Chuck Schifsky, hate to have to wait till 2028 to see this new car, but at least we know what kind of engines are going to be in it. Thanks for
It'll be
joining
cool.
us
It'll be
today.
cool. I think everybody will be happy with it once you get your eyes laid on it. I think everybody will go, oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, well, we'll see. 2028 will be here before you know it.
Best of luck this season, and thanks for joining us on the show.
All right, guys, take care. Thank you.
Alex, IndyCar's got plenty of momentum right now. I mean, it is going to be a couple of years until it really kicks into high gear, but it is nice to have this kind of certainty for the series.
Super important. Series has some juice right now. I know Chuck mentioned it. Fox is all in promoting it, spotlighting drivers, which is very important. These guys do need to be sort of name brand, and the more recognizable the drivers, the better it is for everybody. We see this in that. Look at NASCAR. NASCAR is very, very driver driven series, obviously. Plus, this March schedule for IndyCar, it's awesome. We go from St. Pete directly to Phoenix, then this new inaugural street race in Arlington, and then to Barber, one of the traditional, stop for IndyCar. But that's a full month of March, whereas before you had St. Pete and Barber, and then you had the sort of the thermal club experiment,
which almost made it worse that was there
Yeah,
instead
it
of
was
nothing
so
for
weird.
those weeks.
It
No
was
one
very weird.
was
So
happy
this is
about
much
that.
better. You have 4 straight championship races, all in like solid venues. You have a new street course. You go street course St. Pete, Phoenix, which is going to be great. Street course with Arlington, and then Barber, your first actual dedicated road course. And then you get into the thick of the season in the month of May from there. I'm very enthusiastic. I'm always enthusiastic about the IndyCar season. It's fun to watch. To give it that kind of momentum going into, before they go to Long Beach and then spend all of May in Indy, it's very different for what we've seen for a long time for the sport.
Well, no gaps in the NASCAR series, which is entering 2026 with all kinds of juice coming off last year and the new changes they've made for the fans. Daytona 500, 7.5 million viewers, best since 2023, 9 million tuned in for the end of the race that saw Tyler Reddick win a real thriller of a final 4-lap sprint to the checkered flag. During the race, though, a lot of snoozing going on. We had this issue with the fuel saving that just seems to get worse every year at Daytona. The teams figured out, like Formula One teams, that you can pass people in the pits easier than you can on the track. So if you save fuel, your pit stop's shorter, and you can come out of the pits in front of the people that you were cruising behind for the last 30 laps, which nobody enjoys watching. NASCAR fans always have to have something to complain about. This we're going to be hearing about all year. Fortunately, it only happens at Daytona, and Talladega. Won't even really be a problem in Atlanta, even though that's technically a super speedway. The fuel saving just doesn't become as much of an issue there. Do you think this is something that NASCAR needs to fast track? They've been fast tracking a lot of changes lately. Do you think they need to fast track a solution to the fuel saving at the super speedways this season, or let it mull a little bit and come up with a solution that they can maybe try out next year?
I don't know what kind of solution you can put in place before Talladega, that is going to be really effective. The reality is these crew chiefs are extremely smart people. They're going to figure out a way. I saw in a post-race interview with Denny Hamlin, what he said was the solution is ultimately going to come down to something that is speed and handling related, that's going to basically force teams to actually race and
Right
not
now, it
save
really is a
fuel
video
that way.
game. Foot to the floor or not to the floor, and you don't have to steer. The cars just handle way too well at the speeds they're racing at. So they're talking about maybe take drag away, make them slip and slide a little bit.
Listen, something's got to happen because a place like Daytona should be exciting. Now, those fuel saving stretches, you're less likely to have one of these cataclysmic crashes that takes out, 8, 10 cars, when everybody's just cruising along from a NASCAR perspective, would be like the equivalent of highway speeds. It was interesting to watch on TV because the commentators are just calling out. It's like you would see when the fuel saving sort of periods were coming to an end because it showed up immediately in terms of lap
It was a
times.
5 second swing of lap times. They were doing less than
Yeah.
180 miles an hour at times with the front runners at 50% throttle, which is just mind boggling.
And the thing is, it still turns into chaos the minute, it gets racy towards the end, as we saw. I mean, credit where due. I mean, whoever swallowed the whistle, on that last lap, not throwing a caution and causing that race to go to overtime is to be commended. I think it was that much more dramatic because it wasn't overtime, which I feel like overtime turns into 5, 6 overtimes because it's just the nature of those kinds of restarts. So this was a thrilling finish. I mean, Toyota was basically running that whole fuel saving period. They blocked out the whole field, 3 across. And but in the end, it was Toyota who came out up front, with Tyler Reddick with what was a pretty awesome move. If you're going to lead one lap of the race, the saying, that's the one you want to lead. Pretty awesome move to get there and take that checker. It was, I think, hugely positive for NASCAR also to have 2311 and Michael Jordan, who is visibly ecstatic about the whole thing, win Daytona. Any of those top 8 cars could have won. It was kind of cool to see at the end where it's like you thought, oh, looks like it might be, Hocevar. Oh, here we go. And that's NASCAR. Wild finish, super speedway is it's gonna be wild. You're gonna have the big one or more than one big one. You had all of that with the fuel saving mixed in, but in the end, you got the action that you really wanted for a really awesome dramatic finish, at least from where I sat.
And this really shows you the power of Michael Jordan. I mean, I don't even remember the last time I saw any NASCAR on ESPN, but with him winning this one, they were all over the story. Every news outlet was over the story. We were here in Daytona 500, we were seeing them on the news, on the morning shows, much more than in the past couple of years. So it's pretty exciting to see the new attention coming to the series. The other thing that's really highlighted for me, this is known as the Super Bowl of stock car racing to a lot of people. Big difference between the Daytona 500 and the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl might just be boring, like this
Right.
year's was a bad game. When the Daytona 500 is actually boring most of the way, you still get a great finish and you forget about how boring the rest of the race was.
And you had some guys running up front who you don't normally see. So I think that it bodes well. I think you're going to have a really interesting season, especially with this revised playoff system. Yeah, John Hunter Nemechek running up front for a substantial amount of time in the race. Bubba up front, led 40 laps, I think it was. Different teams, running up front, at least at Daytona. Again, week to week it changes depending on the track and setup and tires and all that stuff. Atlanta should be a lot of fun this weekend. I thought there were a lot of good signs for a season that's going to be really interesting to follow, where I don't know that you could necessarily just, call it and say, oh, X from Team X is a lock here. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting names battling for those playoff positions in the chase.
Well, I wish our show had as exciting as an end of the Daytona 500. Really not sure how to pull that off. But like NASCAR, we will be back next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.
Next week, I'll do it from the car and I'll wreck to end the show.
I like the sound of that. As long as you're wearing a helmet. The Gas is a production of Acar Media and American Cars and Racing.com.